Okay, hello everyone that is here in Zoom room 2 at the TESOL convention. We're here for Best of EVO 2022. We welcome you from all parts of the world with good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. We have 2 presentations lined up for you today. One is, and the first one will be on grammar for TESOL, and the second one will be on Ludic languages, pedagogy, and we will discuss that later, secondly. So without further ado, I'm going to let the speakers for Grammar for TESOL introduce themselves and start the presentation. And one more item, if you could please put your full name and maybe even the country into your name or into the chat. We'd like to know where you're from so that we have a record of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christine. I'm going to start screen sharing now. Okay, can you see my slides?
Yes.
Yes, Nagla,
Yeah.
Everything is perfect.
Okay. All right, hello everyone. This is Nagla Salim speaking to you from Toronto, Canada. So for this year's Best of EVO for Grammar for TESOL, my co-moderator Masahito Watanabe and myself decided to focus on purposeful reflection and how it was really pivotal to the professional development experience we offered in Grammar for TESOL. So our plan for today, I will be talking first about the session achieved outcomes and weekly focus, the platform and the participants, and then Wata and myself will be talking about the different ways we incorporated reflection opportunities for our participants throughout the 5 weeks. And then finally, we'll be talking about our own moderator reflections. So this is the moderating team, myself and Masahito Watanabe from Japan. Grammar for TESOL started in 2020, EVO 2020, and Wata was one of the very keen participants. And then later on, he joined me as a co-moderator, and this is his second. This was his second year co-moderating Grammar for TESOL. A huge shout out to Wata for his continued support and valuable contributions to Grammar for TESOL. So as you can see here, the achieved outcomes were mostly we started looking at getting participants to reflect on their beliefs when it comes to grammar learning and grammar teaching, more theoretical aspects looking at grammar content knowledge and pedagogical content knowledge. And then the second half of the session was mostly geared towards getting participants to apply that knowledge and also draw upon their articulated beliefs as to how they can apply them to grammar lesson plans, instructional activities that are grammar focused, also looking at samples of error correction. And then towards the end, we got them to reflect on professional development goals and think about plans to act out those goals. As you can see, the weekly focus reflected here the objectives that I've just talked about. Our LMS, our learning management system, was Canvas. We also had live meetings every Saturday on Zoom, and those live meetings wrapped up the previous week's activities and introduced the incoming ones. And these were recorded as well for those participants who are unable to attend. A lot of online tools were used for content delivery. To name but a few, we had Padlet, Edpuzzle, Flipgrid, Google Docs, Screencast-O-Matic, and we used various online presentation tools for just to add variety. One of them was Genially. And also participants were encouraged to use those tools in their own contributions and in their task completion. Every week, participants had one main focus that they were required to complete, in addition to several other, one main task for each week. And then there were several other optional tasks that they were encouraged to complete, and most of them actually did complete, even though they were optional. And then after completing every required weekly task, they got a weekly badge. And you can see here, this is a screenshot of our leaderboard on Canvas, and you can see that they were quite busy there. Those who got all 5 weekly badges were awarded the EVO 22 Certificate of Participation. And 13 participants got that certificate. Speaking of our wonderful participants, 68 of them registered from 17 different countries all over the world, and you can see the list of the countries on the slide. They varied in their levels of experience. We had teachers who had 20 plus experience teaching, and we also had beginner teachers. And it was interesting, those beginner teachers shared with us in the introduction and orientation week how they were looking for this course to help them raise their confidence level when it comes to teaching grammar and using online tools to teach grammar as well. Their teaching specializations varied, and their formats and so on. So some of them were EFL teachers, others taught at university. There were others who were teaching one-on-one. And a lot of them were teaching online, but there were others who have transitioned to face-to-face or a blended format. And of course, like with any other PD experience, they varied in their levels of digital confidence. And now I'm going to give it over to Wata to tell us about how we, different ways that we integrated reflection opportunities in Grammar for TESOL. Wata, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you, Nagra, for your presentation. Grammar for TESOL provide 3 main fields for discussion: Padlet, surveys, and discussion forums. Would you please click week 1 Padlet? As for the week 1 Padlet activity, we asked participants their metaphors for grammar. As you can see, unpaved path in hiking, or some long and winding road, or a house of bricks, and so on, or boat navigating on the ocean, the skeleton of the body, etc. Okay, going back to the slides. Week 3 Padlet, would you please open it? Okay, here the theme is for good grammar instruction practices. So we set up 4 major topics: purposeful, authentic, perceived as relevant and useful at an appropriate level. As you can see, these 4 features are essential for good grammar instruction practice. As you can see on Padlet discussion board, these 4 topics are aligned neatly on the board. Therefore, students can transfer from one discussion to other quite easily. Go back to the slides. We also conducted 2 surveys. Week 1, UND Grammar or English survey. Here we asked rather general but fundamental questions. For example, how do you define grammar? Is grammar related to all of the 4 skills, or is it related more to some of the 4 skills than the others? And should grammar be taught implicitly or explicitly? Each of the 2 surveys is coupled with subsequent discussion forums. Students can reflect on the survey results. Okay, go on to the next slide. These are the postings we can find on discussion forums. Okay, go on to the next one. Okay, what we have long considered true, so-called our preconceptions often do not apply to the others. If we can challenge our preconceptions, this would enhance our understanding. So we gave the survey results several images and graphs, and also short keyword summary for the messages posted on the board. These images and summaries would enhance comparison among participants. Okay, go on to the next slide. Okay, click on the next slide. Oh, okay. Oh. Okay. Yeah, graphs, and also click next. Okay. We also organized several practical exercises. In week 3, we asked participants to design grammar-focused lesson plans in which instructional activities are administered. In week 4, we gave students sample errors of students and have our participants correct student error and also have them give feedback. And also in week 5, we gave the video recordings of actual grammar instruction and have them complete observation checklist. Therefore, participants can compare their actual examples of practical exercise, and also since these activities are posted on the discussion forums, they can also compare their own with others and reflect their own practical activities by themselves. This would also give our students a good opportunity for reflection. Okay, this is end of my part. So Nagla, please go on.
Thank you very much, Wada. So another way we got our participants to actively engage in the session content while also taking into consideration their own teaching context was to use Google Docs as a platform for reflective collaborative reading. An example, we used this article on grammar, using grammar terminology in the foreign language classroom to get them to think about why they use or why they choose to use GT or grammar terminology or not use it in their own teaching. So this was also one way for them to reflect. And then finally, as Wata mentioned, for week 5, we got them to reflect on where they want to go after the Grammar for TESOL experience and what kind of goals they have. And we also got them to reflect on their experience, the PD experience itself. So some of the self-identified PD goals were a bit general. So there were some participants who mentioned that they feel that the course has got them to reconsider a lot of their teaching methodologies, and this is something that they would want to continue doing. Others talked about how that it was confidence inducing for them, and specifically when it comes to teaching grammar and using technology for grammar lessons, and that they would continue to gain more confidence in that respect. And then there were some more specific self-identified goals, like for example, one participant said that she wanted to incorporate the pedagogy of education for sustainability, which interestingly also gets students to reflect on their own learning. Word clouds got our participants to, just as they're looking forward or thinking ahead, they looked back at the Grammar for TESOL PD experience. So we asked them to create accounts of that experience, what they gained and so on, and then generate word clouds that would show the prominent ideas that came to their mind when they reflected on the experience. So here are some of very beautiful word clouds that that our participants have created, and you can see some of them have common words and which reflect benefits and what they took out of that experience, and some different ones. So here are some examples. And here as well. Okay, so lastly, we want to reflect on that question. What happens when teachers reflect on their grammar beliefs and practices? And we found that several results ensue, and those are when teachers are not just focusing on the how, but also focusing on the why they're doing what they're doing, they become more open for change, more open to learn new methods, more open to unlearn or relearn old methods. And this, again, gets them to be more confident. And what we found was interesting was when our participants got to reflect on error correction and provision of feedback, several of them started thinking about getting learners themselves to reflect on their performance and reflect on their errors. So when we reflect, we encourage our learners as well to reflect. So they said we can get our learners, for example, to reformulate their whatever written text and so on. We can ask them questions, and this helps learners develop feedback uptake literacy. And of course, the ultimate benefit goes to our students. So when we as teachers reflect and we encourage them and scaffold their reflection, they benefit a lot from that in their own learning. And just as teachers and students reflect, we as moderators as well reflect. And this is what we did all along during the 5 weeks. We had a hidden module on the Canvas LMS for Grammar for TESOL. And we had that as like a reflection journal. And this was the place where we kept all our questions and reflections on things that were going well or things that needed to be improved and so on. And hopefully we will take that into consideration when we're working on Grammar for TESOL for EVO 23 and 24 and so on. Okay, so that brings us to the end. Thank you very much for listening. Here are the references, and that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nagla and Wata. And the floor is open to questions. I've been monitoring the chat. There were some questions about Padlet and the limit to certain numbers of posts. And Nellie suggested that you download the Padlet as a PDF or even archive it so that you open it up for new Padlets, Padlet posts to be posted.
Yeah, and that's what we did. We downloaded it as PDF and then uploaded it so that participants can keep it as a record or a resource for later. Yeah.
Okay, and one more. Could you please share the link or the link to your presentation, to your slideshow?
Yeah, sure. Let me do that right now. And it's in the chat. Let me know
Great.
that you can access it.
Thank you very much, Nagla.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Please raise your hand.
Yes, there is one by NASA. He asked, what is the difference between feedback and reflecting?
That's an interesting question. You mean like feedback that we offer for students, or feedback for us as teachers, or?
That was Saba, not NASA. Sorry.
Okay. All right. So what's the difference between feedback and reflecting? I think reflecting is or should be one of the elements of feedback. Like for us as teachers, okay, thank you, Saba. So I think for us as teachers, reflecting is very, very important, because when you reflect, you you think about what is it that you want to, you look back and you look forward, and you think about steps to take. So you have that knowledge, you reflect, and then after that, of course, unused knowledge is not useful knowledge. So you think and you reflect, and then you have some kind of a plan of action, right? So based on that, then this is what I want to do next. For us, one of the things that we used also, of course, there were ample opportunities for our participants to give us feedback. So they gave us feedback halfway through the session, and continually, like for every single weekly content, we had a discussion forum where they gave us some feedback and so on. And when we get that feedback, we start to reflect, like, where is this coming from? What is it that we need to do about that, and so on. So they're sort of, I don't know which one comes first, but they are complementary. Great question. Thank you so much.
Okay, any other questions?
I can't see any. I can just see the comment that people hope that you will be giving the same session next year.
Yeah, we intend to. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, I think we're ready to move to the next presentation. Jonathan, James, Rose, are you ready? Okay. So go ahead and share your screen.
How's that looking? Is it looking okay?
Open it up wide. Yeah.
Yeah,
I can see it. Yeah.
Roger that.
Great. Thank you.
Oh, there's Jonathan. He's got a beard. Okay.
Hey, James.
Hey.
Hello. How are you?
All right, I'll start the stopwatch. Good evening, everyone from Japan. As we just learned from Mr. Watanabe-san, he said konbanwa. So we are a multinational team based in Japan, Brazil, the US, and Russia. But we'll come to that in a moment. So the moderators, here we are. Rosebud based in Brazil, River Swain based in the States, Jonathan Dehaan based in Japan, and Catherine based in Russia, and James based in Japan. So this is us, all from different backgrounds. Rose has experience using Minecraft as a teaching tool. I have experience teaching with Minecraft. Catherine has experience teaching with Minecraft. Jonathan, do you have experience teaching with Minecraft?
I teach my kids.
That'll
right.
do. River is a student of mine who has learnt about LLP and about how to learn with games, and she has been keeping us on, keeping us a good timekeeper. So I'll move swiftly on. So that's the moderators. So the session, I will be taking on this section, and then Jonathan will be talking about outcomes briefly, and finally Rose will be talking about the lessons learned. So in terms of our session, we had a 5-week class, 5 sync sessions on a Sunday morning at 6 a.m. Japan time, which we won't be doing next year because it's far too early. But yeah, the first class, we introduced everyone to the course, the tools that we're going to use, and our general approach to teaching with games, teaching languages with games. And then we went in a different order because we're called Ludic language pedagogy. So it should be games, language, then pedagogy. But we actually went in this order for the weekly classes. We started with a class about pedagogy, i.e. how does one teach a language? So thinking about PPP, CLT, TBLT, and really, asking the participants to tell us their thoughts about how languages are taught. And then, of course, we'd add some extras that they perhaps didn't know, and generate some discussions around that. So first of all, we thought about how do we teach. The week 3, we talked about games and play, and just I think there's a little bit of a misconception about our focus, and it's not actually digital games. I think digital games only appeared as maybe a quarter of the content that we taught teachers about. We talked about Monopoly, we talked about Simon Says, we talked about folk games, running outside, TIG, tag. We even had a look at the TV program Squid Game, where maybe Squid Game, a Korean TV program where we looked at playground games from different cultures as a way to think about language and cultures and differences and similarities. So we talked about a lot of different things during this week, games and play. Then language was the final one that we talked about, which was basically CLT style, grammar, vocabulary, communication. And then we also looked at literacy skills, so digital literacy, gaming literacy, how to, what is the difference between a tweet and a news article, these ideas of different literacy skills that you can also teach as part of language teaching. And then putting it all together, the students would create a lesson plan of some sort based on what we taught them. So the three main pillars of our approach, pedagogical approach, a game or a playful activity, and then something to be taught with language, make a lesson plan. So let me just move swiftly on to the tools that we used. We only used minimal tools in our class. The previous talk mentioned various different tools. We primarily used Google Docs and Discord. They were the main tools. I don't think we used, no, they didn't, students didn't have to use anything else. Participants didn't have to use anything else. We actually had a single document, which was about 50 pages long, which we called the course book, which we added to each week, where participants would help us fill in tables and charts and leave comments. So we had this single document, which was used for the whole 5-week course. And this was our course book. And you can see here the affordances of this were that we could all write in this course book together during the live sessions. For example, here is page, I don't know, maybe page 20 or something, where we have an activity and the participants are all filling in different games that they know. So we can get a good idea of what everybody knows before going on to the next teachable thing, basically. So yeah, we had this, and then we also had player worksheets, we called them. And this was something for the participants to do as kind of a homework activity or an activity each week. And again, this was a single Google document for that participant for the 5 weeks. So all of their work was in one place, which they could then refer back to and then make their lesson plan at the bottom of the document. So it was, again, just trying to keep everything in one single place. And of course, we could use comments throughout. So he can see Jonathan and myself, we've made some comments on this particular participant's lesson plan that she designed. In terms of Discord, all of our sessions were recorded, and we actually streamed them live onto Twitch and then took that video and put it onto YouTube. So everything was archived. I wanted to mention just before, Jonathan, we still have a minute here. So let me show you what I mean about I believe you can see these documents, right? Yeah, okay. So this is a player worksheet that we designed as a template. And you can see that there is a table of contents where basically we wanted them to remove the cross when they'd finished that particular activity, just as a record to show that they've done it. So this is a completely blank template that we created that we wanted them to fill in throughout the course. And here is a completed one where you can see this participant has removed the crosses, letting us know that she's completed that activity. You can see that she's filled in some of these sections. And finally, at the bottom, her lesson plan, which we've left the comments on at the bottom here. So this was how we kind of kept on top of the different participants' work. Okay, right. So I will go back to here and we'll look at some outcomes. There is a burger there. It's not random. Jonathan.
Yeah, so James showed you the things that the students put together at the bottom of their documents. And so we took some screenshots of their work to show you some examples of the lesson plans that the teachers put together. And so we've got one from Carlos, this magic burger sequence of activities before, during, and after one digital game. We talked about the magic burger, right? Like you're familiar with PPP, we've got the magic burger. And Barbara put together a scaffolding activity using a paper game to help students learn verbs and create short stories. So first, Carlos. Yep. And so as you can see, we organized, this is Ludic Language Pedagogy, LLP. And so the participants had to identify what ludic elements, what language elements, and what pedagogical elements they used in their lesson plan. And so you can see that Carlos is using a digital game, Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes. His language goals are to teach communicative skills, and the pedagogy is a task-based approach, so TBLT. There's just an example of the game. This is the Keep Talking, Nobody Explodes. One person has a bomb that they have to diffuse. The other person's got an instruction manual with really complicated language. So it's a really, really fun, hectic, frantic information gap. So, yep, that's the game that Carlos used. And then his lesson plan is here. So lesson 1 is learn. And so you can see that he wants to explain some vocabulary. In lesson 2, there's play. So they're going to play, keep talking, no one explodes, and they're going to take notes on what they say. In lesson 3, they analyze it, specifically looking at how do they improve their exchanges? How does their fluency improve over the course of the lesson? Lesson 4, replay. That's great. Do it again, right? This is one of the best things that teachers can do with games with students is not just to use them as one shots, but have them replay them and hope for fluent and help fluency development. And then lesson 5 and 6, right, specifically looking at how did you improve, so that the teacher knows what the students are improving in, and the students as well understand their own improvement. So Carlos actually did teach this lesson plan and found that students loved the class. So that was a real success story. Barbara is our second example. Barbara, again, so the Ludic, the language, and the pedagogy. Barbara used Battleship, so that classic board game, sort of a pen and paper game. The language was to have students write their own stories using the simple past, and the pedagogy was PPP. So present, practice, produce. And so there were multiple stages to Barbara's lesson. The first was to pre-teach some vocabulary and to teach them the original commercial game, Battleship, of guessing and responding. So B4, is there a ship there? Hit, miss, you sank my ship, that sort of thing. Next, she remixed it, which was just really creative, and she had students using regular and irregular past verbs instead of the ships, so changing it to verbs and verb tenses. Then they were using subjects and actions, so she put together a grid, right? And she had to, did Peter study for the maths exam, right? And so now they're making complete sentences using the grammar, and then they had to write a short story for the next class. They presented their written production, and there were also different extension activities that Barbara suggested at the end of her lesson plan. There we go. There was questions at the end, I guess. Yep.
Yes, at the end. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
at the
cool.
end, definitely. Cool. Okay, so can you move to, yeah, we're there. So we worked with reflecting on what worked for us. We talked about the session structure. It worked quite well to move slowly, starting with the pedagogy, then discussing play and games, then language, how language are learned. And then the last week, giving participants the chance to put it all together by creating, and through the lesson plans they created, we could see how much they really understood of all the concept of LP at the end of the day. So the session structure worked really well for us. Also the tools Using Discord, although new for most participants, it was also something that we're going to discuss in a minute, difficult at first for some. And the Google Doc, the course book and the player worksheet, these also worked quite well for us. The mediation focus was always on community building, peer feedback, encouraging peer feedback, and giving lots of support for each other. So it was pretty nice to see that those who stayed until, like really took this journey with us, that they really built this sense of community and participated actively, gave feedback and made questions and comments to each other all throughout, and also using the last week feedback system that we asked them to complete. That was really a plus to hear each other. Could you go to the next one, please? Now, some of the things that we thought we need to rethink is the term Ludic in our session title, because that was like a lot in the first and second week, that people got a little bit like, what is Ludic? And it wasn't until the third week when we really worked on games and play that all fell into place, and they understand that we weren't talking really, really about we wouldn't talk really about digital games, but all kinds of ludic activities. In Brazil, for instance, this word is very easy to understand because we use it a lot and we understand it as child play, all sort of play. And that's the sense that we wanted our participants to see, that language, play with the language, play with anything, any resource, games included, right? So we think that we need to change, use a term that is more aligned with the mainstream that teachers can understand for the session title next time. Discord, new to most participants. We are wondering also how we can actually support more of the participants. In the first week, we had more than 50 participants joining the Discord. But and 30 actually introduced themselves in the first week, but only 50% stayed with us until the end and completed the session. So 50% of the 30, so about 50 participants, which is, I think, a very good number because they were super active, super engaged, and some of them continue to engage with us even today. So I think it's pretty plus. The live sessions, we need to rethink that. The time zone is really difficult to accommodate with James and Jonathan and in Japan. And we want also to create more space for live sharing with our participants. And these are the things that we are rethinking for the next year.
Yep.
And it was really a wonderful experience, very different.
And that's us. This is just, I'll leave that there to say that we exist. So yeah. Thanks, Rose.
Okay. Are you ready for questions?
Yes, please. I'll stop screen sharing.
Okay, so questions from the audience, either here or in the chat. There were a few comments, and there was a question about was there any difficulty understanding the games?
Well, was there any difficulty? We only played a game with the participants one time.
We played Spyfall and also Gartic Phone, right?
Oh, we did play Gartic Phone, yeah.
So no, the participants had no problem understanding the games that we taught them. But our session wasn't just about playing games or teaching students or teaching participants about games. It was much more about the pedagogy. So our session was about the participants using any game that they were familiar with in their classroom in a pedagogically enhanced way. So whatever they were familiar with.
Just to add to that, then I showed you a table that we created together of games that we know. It wasn't that we were really bringing in any extra from our own back pocket, like, oh, you got to know about this game. It was more, what do we know? How can we use
what do your students know? Things like that. Yeah.
Dramatic
good question.
activities. Yes,
it's a good question.
Yeah,
it's a good question.
I think it's also important to mention that when we play the games with the participants, we had this reflective moment afterwards to put together all the pedagogy, what they learned, the language and pedagogy with the game they played. So I think this is always really helpful. So this practice of reflecting to prepare them for the last stage of preparing the lesson plan.
Yeah, if anything, what Rose has mentioned just during the speech, the presentation, is that perhaps we didn't play enough games with the participants. We could have played a lot more games and discussed them in a lot more depth, which is something that we didn't do a lot of this time, to be honest. Yeah.
There was a request for you to share your slides. So if somebody could post the link to the slideshow in the chat, that would be good. Yep. And if somebody has another question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask it directly here in our session.
Someone also asked about the participants, if they managed with the games, or did they find them difficult?
Yeah, we just answered that one, I think.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. It's okay.
I think that games are always fun, and it's a great way to introduce an activity and actually to learn. But the thing for us teachers is that it takes more time in planning when we're trying to apply games into our lesson plan. So I think that's pretty much the issue for us, and we prefer to leave it outside, you know.
Yeah.
But yes, it is definitely the best option. Thank you.
I'm glad you recognize that. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I think we just could add a day for games and had fun. You know, it's like a Friday that you wear jeans, okay? You forget about the uniform, so you can have a day for fun. Singing, theater, games, okay? Something like that.
Hello from Egypt. Can we say this activities are dramatical activities?
So Ludic includes everything from role plays and improvisation, dramatic activities, all the way up to, you know, mobile phone games and Xbox and PlayStation. We consider all of this Ludic, essentially, a play, games, digital games. Yeah. So yes, of course.
Yeah, that's the thing with our session. We want to expand that notion of games just from the perspective, but also the game elements that are often we find in digital games, that they are also ludic, and, you know, like make believe, pretending games. This is actually part of our practice already. We just don't maybe, you know, consider it ludic, but we should, because it's fun to look at it from this perspective.
I think Heike has a question. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Are we okay for time? Should we stop?
I don't know. No, you're good.
Okay.
Because we don't have another session, so
yay, let's get Ludic.
More questions. Heike, go ahead, unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for this session, because it's so refreshing. And allow me to switch on my webcam. I'm a little bit on the mobile at the moment. Just one question. If you were to run the session, we hope, what would you do different? And would you perhaps also include games that the students are not familiar with? The games that you yourself favorite a lot, which is Xbox and digital and video games, etc. Would you include those?
I mentioned it briefly just now, but I think that, yes, we could have spent a lot more time playing games with the participants and you know, deconstructing them and considering them as language learning tools. I perhaps wouldn't play Xbox games with the students, but yeah, definitely more, games that would perhaps match a information gap activity, for example. We had an example in Carlos's slide, but I don't see many teachers bringing a PC into the classroom just to play this game. But there are, hundreds of games similar that you can play with. Just make your own with pieces of paper. So I think we would definitely focus on that a bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we would sort of run the risk of hype. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
No, I think that we
Go
would,
ahead.
if we did play a lot more games, I think that would be great for bonding the participants together. But I do think that all of us on the team don't want to hype games over the teaching, right? And so I think there's so much work that we can get into in terms of, there's this really interesting relationship between as games advance and then as pedagogy advances, like it sort of has to go lockstep, right? And so we don't just have to teach, bingo vocabulary games, but we can also try some other different ways of teaching and more, conversational and improvisational ways of teaching with students. And I think personally, I'd like to do that more in future sessions over playing more games with participants.
It's more about what the teacher does with the games than the games itself.
Right.
I was referring to a little bit more what Graham Stanley in his book Digital Play suggested, because the students are familiar with some games. Yeah, they play Minecraft, they play Roblox, but of course you can't play that in class, and you shouldn't play it in class, because when they play, they don't talk. But it's always a good conversation topic for young learners, because as soon as they start talking about their games that they play, they get really talkative. And so this is what Graham Stanley, as a pedagogical sort of topic, suggested. In class, why don't you talk about the games students play at home?
Yeah, it's a wonderful point. Jane, she'll back me up here. I talked about this exact thing yesterday in a different talk at TESOL. So yeah, Heike, thank you. It's if you can't play these digital games, I think the point here is that if you can't play the games that students know in the classroom, you can at least use it as a topic starter, because you're bringing their familiarity with the outside world into the classroom, which may help them learn the language in a bit easier.
Also the stories behind the games are also great, not only to teach language and vocabulary, but to think critically and to have them create new ways to do things like transmedia storytelling or fan fiction and all these elements,
Wonderful.
That's wonderful. That's what, they love. What they love is the characters most of the time. And they love to be part of that story too. So that's an interesting way to introduce games too.
During the pandemic, there was a popular game, Among Us. I don't know if you've heard about it.
I have a paper about it. You should read it.
We had virtual classes at that time, and I downloaded the app in my cell phone, and I used to take like free time just to play Among Us with them. I was lost most of the time, but they loved having me playing with them, something that they liked. I think most teachers play in class, but what we need is to connect the games with content. I think that will be better, because it will help us not just to have a free time that will make us lose focus, but something that we can take advantage in class. I found a website, Classcraft.
No.
Is that good? Is that good? Or you're saying that is something?
No.
Let's not open that.
You just opened Pandora's box.
The Pandora box. Yes, I found that, and I created for them their users, and they were so engaged. I couldn't use it because it takes time, as I was saying before, to prepare an activity that you can connect the Classcraft game with a class, with a content, and I couldn't do it, but it is a great tool. I lost Minecraft session that you had this week in EVO. I lost it. I missed it. And I'm going to watch the video, the recording. But yes, I think what we need is to take more games into class, but not losing the focusing content.
Okay.
Which is
we've got-
difficult, which is why you should attend our session next year to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, send me a message.
Yeah,
We're
please do.
10 minutes. We've extended the Q&A period a little bit for your session. I just wanted to give equal time to Nagla and Wata and
Yep,
see if
please.
there are any more questions about grammar for TESOL, because we do have a little bit leeway here regarding time. Just in case somebody thought of a burning question and didn't get to ask it.
Grammar is not as exciting, I guess.
Well, it depends. It can be. I used to get
Actually,
very
you can
excited about it.
combine.
There are a
Maybe you
lot
can
of games that
combine
you
Ludic
can
with
use
grammar.
grammar with.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, look
Definitely.
at
You know,
look
pick
at
the adjective.
poems. Yeah.
You know,
Oh,
hop
Yeah.
and jump and color the
Exactly.
Play
adjectives,
Quizlet.
things
Why
like
not?
that.
It's a Quizlet
No.
game
Ludic
out
grammar.
of a grammar
Well,
issue,
Quizlet's not a
grammar
game. Are you
question, and
kidding
then
me?
play Quizlet live. It's definitely exciting.
Yes.
In terms of
Jonathan?
in terms of grammar, did your session focus on mostly like linguistic grammar, or did it also focus on like the grammar of film or the grammar of like an organizational sort of a genre approach, like a multimodal approach to grammar as well, or is it that very traditional grammar format?
What did you want to get that?
Yeah,
Want to respond? Yeah, go ahead.
we just focus on some practical instructional methods mainly. So we seldom refer to some linguistic aspects of grammar. Okay, so yeah. So yeah, that's quite out of our
No, like
discussion. Okay.
So you taught, you were working with the participants on how to teach grammar. Like, do you think that those instructional techniques could also be used to look at multimodal constructions and other forms of communication other than speaking and writing?
Yeah. As for the grammar instruction, we introduced some basic concepts. For example, implicit teaching or explicit teaching, that all. And also from these basic concepts, we also organize some practical activities that are useful for daily classroom situations.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Wada. I think what I can do now is just share with you the module pages for our the grammar for TESOL. Like for every week, we on our very first page we had a list of like the different tasks and so on, and then we listed all the tools that that we used and we encouraged our participants to use, in addition to any sort of more specific grammar related key terms. And then all along, as we said, like all the different tools, like we encourage them, for example, to use what is it called? The Picto chart. We encourage them to use Powtoons to create grammar lessons and to create grammar content for their students and so on. I'm not sure we got really into a lot of like using games. But we didn't really go beyond just the usual Kahoot and Quizlet and so on, but not the way that you guys used games. I think maybe we should consider that next time.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we're about to wrap it up.
Rose wants to
Rose?
say,
Yeah,
yes.
I actually
Okay.
have a question. In one of the feedback you received from the participants, I was going to ask, but like Kristen said, you know, it stayed there. It was mentioned pedagogy of education for sustainability. So I wonder how that fits in with the grammar teaching. What kind of approach is that? I got curious to actually learn about this.
Well, that was my very first time to learn about this as well. And that participant got to, I asked her and she posted the main principles of the Education for Sustainability pedagogy. And she said that some of the principles include critical thinking, and one of the activities is to get students to reflect on their own learning. Another principle was collaborative learning as well. So she said that she would take that into consideration as she's creating future grammar lessons and instructional activities.
Oh, I see. Thank you.
Yeah, it was new knowledge for me as well.
Yeah, it seems to fit as well with the concept of thinking about learning, right? Like in the grammar realm, what grammar I'm learning, how we use that grammar and that kind of thing, right? Like how critically you actually apply language. Yeah, that's nice. It's something to look for, to learn more about. Cool, thank you.
Okay, I would like to thank both teams here, the presenters and also the facilitators from the Electronic Village Online for being here. These presentations were, again, very good, very interesting, and we encourage everyone to participate in the actual sessions. The best of the EVO sessions take place between January and February, and we're going to gear up for the next round pretty soon. So look for the call for proposals coming out in early July. And so this is just a little plug for EVO, and here Best of EVO is just a summary of what happened during the sessions. And of course, they were very exciting. So I would like to thank everybody for being here on behalf of the call interest section of TESOL and on behalf of EVO. So have a good day, and we hope to see you again this afternoon for another session with two more presentations.